What's up, guys? I am your host, Max Van Auken, and I am here to break down UFC 261 and my experience covering it. First, I break down this event in two ways. You have fans and energy, and then the second way would be moments. So let me break it down to you. Fans offers such a unique thing to sports. It truly brings it to life. This is the first UFC event with fans, first really sporting event with full-on fans. Dana White's been a trailblazer for the UFC. He was the first to really attack sports during the pandemic, say, look, we'll have a fight island if we have to. But either way, we're getting fans back in the building. UFC 261 had a full attendance. Unbelievable. It truly brought the sport back to life. And now, including in those fans, we had Tom Brady. We also had Chad Ochocinco. We had Antonio Brown. We had Tim Tebow. And lastly, we had Jake Paul. Daniel Cormier said, we are not doing that. He goes right up to Jake Paul, puts his finger in his chest, basically says, you don't want this. Now, Jake Paul, let me break this down to you very clearly. This is not a fight that you want. Does he have skills, fundamentals boxing skills? He does. He does. He really does. But this is not a regular boxing match if he were to ever compete with Daniel Cormier. You're talking about a two-time UFC champion. You're talking about an Olympian. And you're talking about a fighter who actually has legitimate boxing skills. Ben Askren. He has a great MMA career. He was never a UFC champion, but he had success in a lot of other organizations. He was not known for his hands. He was not known for his striking ability. He was known for his wrestling. Nate Robinson, good NBA player, great athlete, not a boxer. Daniel Cormier knows how to box. And really something that people don't think about also is he's 230, 240 pounds. He's a much larger man than Jake Paul. Nate Robinson was not. Ben Askren was not. And now we also have the moments athletes, like I talked about. So I've tweeted this before, a moment athlete. A moment athlete is an athlete that's able to not only maintain level of play or performance during high pressure situations, but actually elevates. We've seen Michael Jordan do this. We've seen Tiger Woods do this. We've seen LeBron James do this. We've seen Derek Jeter do this. We're starting to see Kamaru Usman do this. I've said Floyd has done it. I've said like a Muhammad Ali has done this. What he is able to do in these high-pressure situations in hostile territory, Kamaru Usman put on the performance of a lifetime, his best performance. I think Usman's going to win this fight, but I didn't think he was going to knock him out in that fashion. Usman entering this territory where he's officially able to evolve and grow even as a champion. And that usually doesn't happen. Normally when you're a contender, you get hungry and you want to become a champion and you grow and you consistently improve. But when you become a champion, often we see champions get stagnant and they just do enough to what it takes to win and maintain because that pressure builds up. Usman's still evolving and growing as a fighter, even as a champion. And that is why, in my opinion, and I agree, he's the number 2 pound-for-pound champion fighter in the world right now. He is. And he's entering elite territory with those title defenses. But the one thing I do want to do is pump the brakes on the Georges St. Pierre comparisons. And now, if you're not familiar with Georges St. Pierre, he's arguably the greatest fighter of all time. Only lost 2 fights, and he revenged both of them. He has 9 title defenses, and he's also a champ. And he retired on top. The only other fighter to really do that in the UFC is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Let's pump the brakes. Let's let Kamaru Usman build his legacy first before we compare him and try to see why he's not as great as this fighter. What does this mean for Masvidal? Masvidal's not done. It doesn't mean he still can't fight. It still doesn't mean he doesn't bring value to the UFC. He's still a fan favorite. He still is a very exciting and talented fighter. He's just not a champion. Charles Barkley never won a championship. Just because you don't win a championship doesn't make you any less of a player or an athlete. You could still be incredibly successful and talented in your respective sport. You just weren't the champion. You just didn't win the title. But I still believe there's big fights for him to make. He could fight a Nate Diaz again. He can have these big money fights. He's still a big draw. He's just not a champion. Rose Namajunas is a moments athlete. She has stepped up to the biggest stages. She stepped up against Joanna. She has now stepped up and won the title as an underdog with a head kick. We did not see that coming. Now, I predicted Rose with the upset. But in this fashion, in the first round, Rose has such a unique quality about her. She is a superstar because she doesn't want to be a superstar. She is incredibly humble, And she doesn't have a selfish quality in her. And it makes all of us root for her more. She had Joe Rogan cry in the octagon interviewing her. She has this it to her that just makes people drawn to her. People gravitate towards her. And she's able to win the title yet again. Rose honestly may have stolen the whole night. Just to Valentina, she fought angry. Dana White even said it. She just has something to prove. And she just like, oh, you really think she can contend with me? And she proved that nobody can. Everyone's talking about, oh, should she fight Amanda Nunes? No, there's no need for that. Amanda Nunes is the GOAT of women's fighting. Just flat out. Champ, beat. She's beaten Ronda Rousey. She's beaten Tate. She's beaten Holly Holmes. She's the bigger fighter. Just let her be great in her own way. Amanda Nunes be great in her own way. It's probably not... Do the fans want to see it? Most likely. It's a super fight. But she doesn't need to fight Amanda Nunes to validate her successful career as one of the greatest women's fighter of all time. Valentina put on such a great performance, absolutely dominant from start to finish. Chris Weidman's leg injury on Uriah Hall was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in person. Now, I was covering this event, UFC 261, with my guy Rob. That was, I can't even put it into words. The whole arena was just speechless. Like, you could hear a pin drop when it happened. And what's really weird about this injury, if you remember back when he won the title against Anderson Silva, the rematch, Anderson Silva broke his shin over Chris Weidman's shin. And now you fast forward years later, the same thing happens to Chris Weidman. And we've really only seen this twice in UFC history with the shin injury. And what are the chances it's the fighter who fought Anderson Silva when Anderson Silva broke his shin? Obviously, thoughts and prayers out to Chris Weidman. I know he already underwent successful surgery. I still believe there's something left in the tank for Chris Weidman. I still believe he has that itch to be great. But if he were to retire today, he retires as a UFC Hall of Famer. He's beaten Lyoto Machida. He's beaten Vitor Belfort. He's beaten Anderson Silva. He's fought the who's who, and he's won. And he's become a champion, which is such a hard thing to do in this sport. Then we had Anthony Smith. The undercard fights, the prelims were great as well, but Anthony Smith was just kind of the start of it all for the main card, for the pay-per-view buys. He broke someone's leg through a leg kick. I don't think people understand or appreciate the leg kick and that actual strike itself. We've seen so many fighters lose because of this. Look at Conor McGregor. We're talking about a trilogy because of Dustin Poirier's ability to attack Conor's leg. When you have someone who has so much power, so much explosiveness, to be able to cripple them or to deteriorate their leg so they don't have any power is such an incredible asset and such a valuable weapon to use. And we see it quite a bit, but of course the flashy knockout on the chin like Usman over Masvidal or a slam or a crazy submission will get the viewer's eyes first. But that leg kick, we have seen it time and time again completely just dismantle the other opponent. We've seen Aldo make a career off this. Keith Jardine back in the day beat Chuck Liddell off the leg kick. The leg kick is such an underappreciated tool that has determined the outcome of so many different fights. This event was just incredible. Covering it, had the opportunity to cover it because of the UFC. First of many, hopefully. Covering the NBA has been tons of fun, but there was nothing like that crowd in the UFC. I've never experienced anything like that. Electric from start to finish. Saw every fight, prelims, main card, title fights. It was unbelievable. Guys, please punch down that subscribe button, download, rate, and subscribe. This is also going to be a podcast with further in-depth breakdowns on the Max Van Auken podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in UFC 261.